Thank you everyone for coming. In addition to my mother's introductions, I would like to thank my grandmother for coming from Connecticut, as always a regular on a Sip of Torah. And I'd like to thank my cousin Andy, Mr. Yoni Monat. Andy is an expert in Yiddish and genealogy. Hopefully we will use some of his skills later on. And my chavrusa, Rabbi Mayor, Dr. Andy Schumann. I'm very big chava that he decided to join today, and thank you all for coming. So Be'ezra Hashem, today we're going to come to answer a couple of related questions, and hopefully this will shed light on a few of the major themes of Chanukah, and will give us a few aspects, a few points to focus on as we celebrate the 8 days of Chanukah. So first I'm going to start by reading probably the two main texts that we have in the Masorah, in the tradition, regarding Chanukah. And we're going to come to see through these texts which are the aspects of Chanukah that are being focused on. So we'll start with the Gemara. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, has the famous question, "My Chanukah? What is Chanukah?" And Rashi says, "My Chanukah al iza nes kava'ua." On which miracle was Chanukah founded on? And the Gemara is going to now come to address which miracle Chanukah was founded on. And the Gemara tells the story. The 8 days of Chanukah, we don't say eulogies, we don't fast, because when the Greeks entered into the Heichal, into the aspect of the part of the Beis Hamikdash, Timu Kol Hashmanim, they defiled all the oils that were in the Heichal. And when the Chashmonayim, the Hasmoneans, won, they only found one jug of oil with a seal of the Kohen Gadol, and it was only expected to light one night. A miracle came, and they lit from this one flask 8 days. And then Lashana Acheres, the next year, Chazal enacted that there should be Yomim Tovim, not Isser Malacha, not that we're not allowed to do forbidden activities like Shabbos and Yontif, but some aspect of festive days of Halal and Hodah. Now, from this text, we find there is some discussion about the war, but the only miracle that is attributed to being a miracle is the lighting of the oil for 8 nights. The victory of the Greeks is not explicitly outlined from the Gemara as being a miracle. Now we'll go to Al Hanisim, which is what we say throughout Chanukah in Birkas Hamazon and Shmona Esrei. Al Hanisim tells the following story. In the days of Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan, the Kohen Gadol, the Hasmonean, and his sons, when the evil kingship of Greece stood up upon your nation Israel, to make them forget about your Torah, and to have them stop doing mitzvahs and do averos. That on you. Hashem, in His great mercy, Hashem stood up for the Klal Yisrael. He delivered the mighty into the hands of the few, because there were many Greeks and only a few Jews. And the Jews were weak. And many Greeks into the hands of a few Jews. And then continues, and you, Hashem, made your great and holy name in your world, and you made for Klal Yisrael a great salvation. And then the rest of Al Hanisim says, in the aftermath, then they lit candles. But this aspect of Al Hanisim is not really focused on what the Gemara was focused on about the miracle of the oil. the main focus of Al Anisim is about the military victory over the Greeks. That's what we're mostly recognizing in Al Anisim. So, question that arises is how come the Gemara focused mostly on the miracle of the oil being lit for 8 days, whereas Al Hanisim is mostly focused on the military victory. The Al Hanisim mentions about the rededication of the Beis HaMikdash, V'tiharos Mikdashecha, that we purified the Mikdash, and we lit candles in the Chatzar. And what you're saying earlier is also, hopefully, Be'ez Hashem, we're going to try to tie in these two miracles. I'd like to welcome Nai Chavrusa from the Five Towns, Al-Bachar Elimelech Weizman, who's joined us before, and thank you, Elimelech, for joining. And we're just getting going with hopefully discussing some of the inyanim of Chanukah. So thank you for joining, Elimelech. So I'm going to start with a chat I asked Rabbi Chesses this question last year. Rabbi Chesses is the rabbi of Young Israel Sharon. And Rabbi Chesses always has more of a historical bent on answering questions. And he suggested that the author of the Gemara and the author of Al Hanisim were maybe different authors at different time periods. So maybe the author of the Gemara felt the miracle of the oil was more worth focusing on, and the author of Al Hanisim felt that the miracle of the Mulchama, the war, was more worth focusing on. Most of the Mefarshim and the Bali Musar, they try to combine and meld these two miracles together. Before we do, we're going to bring up another kasha this is the kasha that is stimulated probably the most discussion on the topic of Chanukah, and it is stimulated the most discussion in all of Yiddishkeit. I saw one sefer said that there are 500 answers to this question. The Beis Yosef, who's the author of the Shulchan Aruch, writes in his commentary to the Torah the following question. He says, given that, like we read earlier in the Gemara, there was expected for oil to burn for 1 night, and oil burned for 8 nights, so the first night was not really a miracle. Only the last 7 nights were miracles. So how come we're celebrating 8 nights of Chanukah? We should only be celebrating 7 nights of Chanukah for the 7 nights that were miraculous. But for the 1 night that oil was expected to light, we should not be celebrating Chanukah. How come Chanukah is 8 nights? I can't say I'm fluent with every single answer to this question, but I would certainly not be surprised if that was amongst the answers that's provided. The fact that it's a miracle that we were able to find that 1 flask of oil. So there's several Mefarshim. One is Reb Chaim Friedlander, who was one of the Bali Musar from last century. The Maharal, who was from a few hundred years ago, very well accepted in Hashkafa and thought, as well as the Pri Chadash. The Pri Chadash is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. They say something like the following, that the Gemara is telling us about the miracle of the oil, and that is the trigger to let us know that the Milchama that the war was also a miracle. My Rashiv from Monsey, Rav Ron Braun, he shtalled on this. He was focused on this point when he spoke in Chanukah several years ago, and he was saying the following suggestion, that the miracle of the oil is a clear miracle, because there's certain scientific outlines that are attributed to a flask of oil. Everyone knows that 1 flask of oil burned for 1 night. So for a flask of oil to burn for 8 nights is a clear miracle, going out and above the normal nature. But for a war, it could be that the war was viewed in somewhat natural terms. We're all familiar with the Revolutionary War, that the Americans were not as well trained as the British, and they were fewer in number, and nonetheless they managed to win the war. There have happened in military history upsets, certainly in sports. We're familiar Everyone remembers when the Patriots were 18-0 and they lost the Super Bowl. That was very unexpected. But so the war could have been attributed to more natural causes and not really be such a war. But now that Hashem made the miracle of the oil, which was an undeniable miracle for oil to burn for an additional 7 nights, now we'll bring in what is said in Most Sur, which is the poem that's sung after menorah lighting. In the second to last paragraph, tells the story of Chanukah in brief. Yevanim nikbetzu alai, the Greeks gathered against me, azai b'mei Hashmanim, in the days of the Hasmoneans, ufartzu chomos migdalai, they breached the walls, v'timu kol Hashmanim, they defiled the oils, and then, uminosar kankanim, from the leftover jugs of oil, meaning the one jug that was found, nasanes l'Shoshanim, Hashem made a miracle for the Shoshanim, for the Jews. The fact that the oil lasts for 8 days. Then, Maharshiv Rabbi Braun was only on this next point. B'nei Vina, people of Bina. Bina is the attribute of Mavin being davar l'davar, understanding the reality in one situation and applying it to a different situation. So B'nei Vina, knowing that the burning of the oil for 8 nights was a miracle, the Chachamim applied the principle of Bina, and therefore Yemei Shmona kavu shir nanim, they enacted 8 nights for song and jubilation, because they realized that the war was also a miracle. That even though the war seemingly could have been attributed to natural causes like an upset, but since Hashem revealed that it was a clear miracle with the oil, that tipped us off that the milchama, that the war was also a miracle, and therefore we celebrate 8 nights, 1 night for the milchama, 1 night for the war, and the last 7 nights for the burning of the oil. And this is a main theme that's incumbent for us to look at, is when certain natural events happen, and then we may think that it's attributed to nature or some sort of cause and effect statistics. Then it's up to us to try to, when we find a revealed miracle that would shed light on that which happens in the more ordinary, mundane, that's also coming from Hashem. Yeah, I hear what Andy, what you're saying, that like it sounds like the war is somehow like 1/8 or 1/7 as important as the oil, as every night burning. Yeah, I hear your ha'ara, your insight. It could be that just the war is like I saw Rabbi Gerkel, the rabbi in Shiloh House in Stoughton. He gave me this kuntres called My Chanukah, which talks about the Gemara we learned from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants to learn up that the one night of the celebration for the victory of the war is akin to Purim, which is also 1 night, and Purim celebrates our victory over Haman. As Jim will talk about this more later, but it could be that the Chachamim already had this criteria that a war is worthy celebrating for 1 night, whereas the oil, each candle is an additional miracle, even though it was it's kind of like the same miracle continuing, but apparently the sages felt that each miracle was worthy of another night, and that's why we light our minhag to light the newest candle first, to be megala about the extra chiddush, the extra new point of the new miracle that's happening. Okay, now I'll suggest a different answer. Again, we're holding by the Beis Yosef's kasha. The Beis Yosef's kasha is, how come if the first night of Chanukah is, or if the burning of the oil for the first night was expected, how come Chanukah lasts 7 nights? So we gave one answer. First night is for the war, like especially in the Pri Chodesh. The Meiri also says this answer. I'm going to say a different answer as far as what's the miracle for the first night. Is that when oil burns, this is a seemingly a natural event, but it could be that we want to reclassify this as also a miracle. I was speaking with Reb Meilech Horowitz, the son of the Boston Rebbe, at the Boston Kollel last week, and Reb Meilech pointed out to me that the Yavanim, the Greeks, were very into teva, into natural beauty, aesthetics, glorification of the body, nature. So we on Chanukah want to reclassify that and show that even a burning of one jug of oil, which is expected to burn for one night, is really a miracle. And just to shed some light on the topic of oil burning being a miracle in the eyes of the Chachamim, is a Maisa, a story on Gemara Tainis Chafheim and Aleph with Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. So the Maisa goes, it was Chad Shimshei Chazil Labarti Dahavi Atziva. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa saw his daughter one Erev Shabbos, and she was sad. Amrla said to her, Biti Lamaya Tzivas. He said, my daughter, why are you sad? Amrla, she said to him, Klishal Chomitz is Chalfli, but Klishal Shuman Vihidlakti Mimenu or La Shabbos. I meant to light the jug that was filled with oil, but I got it confused and I accidentally lit the jug that was filled with vinegar. And now apparently Shabbos already started and there was no light. So she was sad that she was not going to have any lights for Shabbos. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa said, Amar la biti maya plaslach. Why does this bother you? Mi sha'amar l'shemen v'yadluk. The one who said to oil that it should light. Hu yomar l'chometz v'yadluk. He will say to vinegar that it should light. And what was the end of the story? Tana hayad dolek v'holech kol hayom kulo. This vinegar lit, and it was lit the whole day. Ad she'ivim menu or lahavdalah, all the way until the next night, and they made havdalah from this flame. So this is a tremendous level of bitachon, and there's a reason why Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa is from the Gemara, is one of the rabbis of the Gemara, is one of the sages. But this is the ideal view for a Jewish person to how to view the burning of oil, that it's oil burns because it's Misha Amar Lashem v'Yadluk. It's because Hashem said to the oil that it should burn. So therefore, if Hashem said to the oil that it should burn, Hashem could also just tell vinegar that it should burn. Now, in general, the halacha is ein somchen al hanes. We're not allowed to rely on a miracle. But for someone who's a big Bal Bitachon like Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, apparently he felt this was appropriate hishtadlus, and the result was that the vinegar lit the whole Shabbos. The Ramban in Parshas Bo also speaks about the inyan of Nisim Nistarim B'Megala Nisim Gluyim. In the famous shtickle, what's known as the most famous piece from the Ramban ala Torah, the Ramban writes at the end of Parshas Bo, at the end of the piece, the last paragraph, he says that from the Nisim Gluyim, from the revealed miracles, should be Megala the Nisim Nistarim, the hidden miracles, meaning the normal day-to-day operations of life. So in this context, the burning of the oil of Chanukah for the last 7 nights is Megala, reveals us that even the first night, the flask that was expected to burn really is a miracle. It's just called Nisim Nistarim. It's called concealed or hidden miracles, but that oil lights from Hashem. And another place we see this is, I thought the Shaltzu is Leah Imenu. A couple weeks ago in the Parsha, we learned about how she gave birth to the first 4 sons, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. The first 3 sons, Marishiva and Moshe of Kastin, said she did give some partial Hakar Satov, some partial gratitude, but the 4th son, Yehuda, she gave a full gratitude because she got more than her portion. So this giving birth to the 4th child revealed to her that even though she was expecting the first 3 children to be given to her, because there were to be 12 children of Yaakov, 4 wives, 12 divided by 4 equals 3 children. But now that Leah was given the 4th child, this was Megala, this revealed that even the first 3 children were not a given and were not expected, but really came directly from Hashem. And I heard on the Bitachon hotline last week, he brought from Rav Moshe Feinstein on yesterday's Parsha, in the context of Yaakov Avinu, the Yesod, that it's appropriate for us to appreciate the miracle of seeing, of being able to see. Maybe when we say the bracha of Pekach Ivrim in the morning, we give sight to the blinds, is a good time for it. But it's appropriate to things that we may get used to or take for granted. It's appropriate to take some time to come to appreciate them. So this is my second Mahalach, and I saw when I was at Eitz Chaim, I saw this sefer. It's called Inside Chanukah. I want to thank Mrs. Rudenstein because the inside inscription is that this book is from the Rudensteins. So thank you for donating the sefer. And in this sefer, he brings many answers to the Beis Yosef's question, and one of them is this answer, the last one that I just said, in the name of the Alter from Kelm. So the Alter from Kelm holds that the first night of Chanukah is to celebrate the hidden miracle of oil burning at all, and then the last 7 nights of Chanukah is to celebrate the revealed miracle of oil burning for the last 7 nights. So now let's talk about the candle lighting. What is Chanukah about, and what is the Ner Chanukah about? So look in the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah, Perek Gimel, Halacha Gimel. The Rambam says that the purpose of first he tells in the first couple halachos, he tells the story. Interesting, the Rambam brings both miracles. First he talks about the war, then he talks about the oil. Then in Halacha Gimel he says that the Chachamim enacted that we should be lighting candles, and the Rambam's lesson is laharos ulegalos hanes. 2 different words, but pretty much meaning the same thing, like to display and reveal the miracle. That is the purpose of Ner Chanukah, to display and reveal the miracle. And the Rambam says later on, towards the end of Hilchos Chanukah, Perek Daled Halacha Yud Beis, the Rambam says that the famous lashon from the Rambam, mitzvah Ner Chanukah, mitzvah chavivihi ad ma'od, the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is an exceedingly dear mitzvah. The tzarech adam lizarba, a person is required to be careful in kedei lehodia hanes, to publicize the miracle, ulehosif b'shvach hakel, to praise Hashem, v'odaya, and give admittance al hanisim she'asa lanu, on the miracles that He did for us. So it's clear in the Rambam from 2 places that the purpose of lighting Chanukah candles is to reveal the miracle. Now, the halacha brings in several places that the candles are specifically to spread the miracle. One is, we're familiar that we make the bracha. First we make the bracha, Asher Kitchen Mitzav Tzivanu Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah, that Hashem commanded us to light the Ner of Chanukah. Then we say the bracha of She'asa Nisim Lavosenu, that Hashem did miracles for us. So the fact that we're making a bracha about miracles at the time of candle lighting, I think is a strong indication that the purpose of the candle lighting is to reveal the miracle. We can also look at the halachos and see in a few places that pursuing nisa, that publicizing the miracles, of ikar, is a fundamental part of Ner Chanukah. First shadow that can come up is that if a person, first night Chanukah is Thursday night, so if a person did not light candles Thursday night, can he light candles Friday during the day? The halacha brings from the same sefer that I quoted from at length from the Chol Hamoed talk, Shalosh Num Kodem Achag, he brings that candles lit during the day are invalid because the light doesn't shine well. It's not stark. It's not strong pursuing nisa. It's not strong publication of the miracle. Another halacha, candles lit very high up in the, like someone has the person should ask his rabbi what to do exactly in this case, but could be Mikra Hadin, that if a person lights Chanukah candles very high up, above 20 amos, which is like above 30 feet in the air, in a way that people can't see it. Similarly, in Hilchos Sukkah, one of the opinions holds that a sukkah that's too tall, people are not going to be able to see the schach. So candles lit so high up that people are not going to be able to see it may be invalid, because people are not going to look that high up at the menorah. Also, candles lit below 3 tefachim, below like 9 inches, very close to the ground. Also, the Levush holds it should not be lit for the same reason, that people are not going to see the candles. So So it's very well borne out in the halacha that the purpose of lighting candles on Chanukah is to spread the miracle. So we're suggesting that everyone agrees to what the Gemara says, that the last 7 nights are for the oil, the burning of the oil, the extra nights, and it's definitely appropriate to have that miracle in mind, the fact that Hashem made oil that's only expected to burn 1 night, burn for 7 nights. But we're also suggesting it's appropriate to have in mind have in mind that the miracle of the war, when Hashem controls physical, natural occurrences to be, instead of cause and effect, that they're really from Hashem, or the burning of the oil the first night, the scientific fact of oil burning, redefining that as the first miracle. It's appropriate to have both of these things in mind when we're lighting near Chanukah. I'll point out that the Chachamim felt it appropriate to say in the Nusach HaBracha that we say for every mitzvah d'Rabbanan that we do, for lulav and for lulav after the first day, for Shabbos candles, for Chanukah candles, we always use this nusach, Asher Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam, blessed be Hashem, God, King of the universe, Asher Kidshanu Mitzvosav, who commanded us with his mitzvos, Vitzivanu, and commanded us to do the following action: to light Chanukah candles, to light Shabbos candles, to shake lulav after the first day, for a woman who's performing a mitzvah that she's enim to v'oseh, that she's not obligated to do but chooses to perform, like shofar. Still says Vitzivanu. So somehow the Chazal felt it appropriate that it's appropriate to say that Hashem commanded us, even though it's using the intermediary of the Chachamim. And we're also familiar with the pasuk in Dvarim that says Lu Sasser, Yaminu Smol, that is, the Torah tells us not to deviate left or right from the words of the rabbis. Okay, now I'd like to suggest the last mahalach. Again, as I saw brought down, there are 500 answers to the Beis Yosef's kasha, but I'm going to suggest a third mahalach. Again, the Beis Yosef's kasha is that if oil was expected to burn for the first night, then how come we're celebrating 8 nights of Chanukah instead of only 7 for the last 7 that are miraculously burned? How come the first night is celebrating? And it could be that my answer is going to be related to one of the answers that was discussed earlier, but I'll begin by saying as follows. There's a well-known chiluk between Purim and Chanukah. I saw this in the Sefer, in the Kuntras by Lubavitch Rebbe. He brings down from the Levush, who's one of the halacha commentaries, explaining the Tur, the following difference between Purim and Chanukah. Purim, Haman came la'arog la'shmid la'abed. He came to totally annihilate every Jew, just like what was done in Europe in the last century, regardless of religious affiliation, regardless of what shul you went to. If you didn't go to shul, Haman was out to annihilate and destroy every single Jewish person. And therefore, the Milchama, the war that we fought against Haman, was to save our lives. And when we were fighting to save our lives, therefore we celebrate with physical acts such as eating the Purim Suda. Chanukah is not like that. Chanukah had we agreed to become Hellenized and take on the Yavanisha ways of acting, eating, walking around, not learning Torah, not doing mitzvahs, just being integrated in the Greek society, we would not have had to fight this war. This was a totally war of reshus, a war of option. It was the only reason why we fought this war is because we felt it important that lashkicham Torasecha, like we say in Alanisim, is not a valid option. To forget about the Torah, that's not a valid option. Lavir michukei ritzonecha, to transgress the mitzvos, that's not a way to live. So the fact that the winning of the war is described as a miracle, that means, like we spoke about earlier, the mighty in the hands of the few, the mighty in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few. But I'm suggesting that the fact that we took up, like we say in Alanisim, we say that this is a this is a riv, this is a din, this is something that we took upon ourselves to fight for, I think that's a miracle. Now, I'm going to shell a kasha on the Rambam that Rabbi Miller, who used to be the Rav Eitz Chaim in Sharon, asked a few years ago in Shul, back when he lived in Sharon, probably like 6 years ago. He asks on the Rambam, one of the Rambam that we quoted earlier, Parak Gimel Chach Gimel. The Rambam says that the days of Chanukah are Yemei Simcha v'Halal, are days of Simcha and Halal. Now, the Gemara does not mention the word Simcha in associating with Chanukah. The Gemara says that it's Yomim Tovim for Halal and Hodah, but it doesn't say anything about Simcha. So before we define all these terms, the question Rabbi Miller asked in Shul is, why did the Rambam say that Chanukah is a day of Simcha, which is translated as like joy? Why did the Rambam use that lashon if the Gemara didn't say this? Why is the Rambam saying that Chanukah is a day of Simcha? I honestly don't remember what Rabbi Miller answered, but I thought the answer is follows. Before I say my answer, the Lubavitch Rebbe gives an answer to this, and he ties it in with the earlier discussion. He says that Yemei Simcha means days of celebrating physically from the war. Just like on Purim we celebrate physically from winning the war, so to Chanukah we celebrate physically from winning the war. But the Lubavitch Rebbe Shita is that the Rambam holds that the Nisim of Chanukah are both the oil and the war. But I want to suggest that Simcha is as follows. That, as we have introduced, the Chashmonaim felt so strongly about keeping an attachment to Torah and mitzvos that they're willing to fight a war. I think it could be that's a miracle that we're celebrating on the first night. I haven't seen this brought anywhere, but I talked to Rabbi Beer, the Rosh Kol in Boston. He told me I'm entitled to say my own answer. So I'm suggesting that the first night of Hanukkah could be to celebrate the miracle that we felt so strongly about Torah and mitzvos, our connection to Hashem, that we're willing to fight a war for it. And therefore, when the Rambam says that Hanukkah is Yemei Simcha, that it's a day of Simcha because Hashem honored our initial resolve, our initial hachlata, taking strong that we're going to fight the war, and He rewarded that by giving us siyata d'shmaya and helping us out and helping us win the war. And the fact that Hashem Taka did Amad Lahim Be'isar Sam, stood up for us, Rafta Danta Siram Nakam Sigma Son, like we say in Ali Nisim, that Hashem took up the fight for us and allowed us to be successful in the war. Because when we realize that we have taken a stand for Kavod Shemayim, for our connection to Hashem, and Hashem has rewarded that with siyata d'shmaya and success, that's a cause for tremendous simcha. That's why I think the Rambam says, that's why the Rambam says that Chanukah is Yemei Simcha, because we have such simcha from the fact that we had this initial resolve to fight the war, and that Hashem rewarded us with the victory and allowed us to rededicate the Beis HaMikdash. To realize that Hashem is with us in our efforts to steig in Ruchnius, to come closer to Hashem, that Hashem is with us in these efforts, I think that's a cause for tremendous simcha. Yeah, Hashem is a Baal Milchamos. Hashem is the master of the war. So I'm not sure if that exactly speaks to the Nikudas, the point my dad was saying, but we do say in davening that Hashem is the master of wars. And Shlomo, we're familiar in Koheles that Shlomo Melech, when he says there's a time for this and a time for that, one of the times he says is that there's a time for war. Now, so now we'll tie back into the kasha that we brought up from Rashi on the Gemara in Shabbos, the Afchaf Aleph from Beis. The Gemara in Shabbos said, "My Chanukah, what's Chanukah?" And Rashi said the question of the Gemara is, Al Izanis Kava'ua. On which miracle did they found Chanukah? So we're suggesting everyone agrees this is a halacha psuk in the Gemara the Gemara paskins that the miracle of the oil lasting for an additional 7 nights is a miracle that we're celebrating on Chanukah. And amidst all of our discussion, we should not get lost in its point. That's ultimately what the Gemara focuses on the most, is the miracle of the oil burning for the last 7 nights. We're suggesting a few explanations for the Beis Yosef's kasha as far as why are we celebrating the first night of Chanukah, for the night that the oil was expected to burn. And we're saying, so we said 3 answers. So we said one answer, especially from the Pri Chadash, is that the first night is to celebrate the victory, the military victory, the war, the fact that Hashem helped us out and delivered the many into the hands of the few, the strong into the hands of the weak. Second answer, we said, is that, like from the Altar from Kelm, the very burning of the oil on the first night, the fact that oil burns at all is a miracle, and that's worth celebrating one night. Not like what the Yavanim hold about that there's certain inherent power in nature. And the third answer is that the fact that the Yidden felt so strongly about Torah and mitzvos that they fought a war for it, where that itself is a miracle, and we're celebrating the first night of Chanukah for that initial resolve, that we're celebrating that for our initial resolve that we took up the war. Eli Malach, what was the lashon of the Rosh Yeshiva when he said about initial resolve? He said it's in like the Shmuz last week. Yeah, Yav Daita. It's a lashon by Yaakov Avinu, that Rabbi Katzenstein, our Rosh Yeshiva from the 5 towns, he mentions that Yaakov Avinu was Yav Daita. He made an initial decision, and this is the initial decision that the Klal Yisrael made when we fought that war. Now, I mentioned earlier that hopefully we'd hear from my cousin Andy for some of his talents. I asked him to give us a rendition of the Chanukah song Oy Chanukah in Yiddish, and the reason why I asked Andy to deliver this is because this song hits on a lot of the themes that we spoke about. And Andy, if you're ready, if you can go on unmute, and if you're ready to go.
Sure. Yeah, I was just looking this up, and there it's funny. So this first published in 1912, was written by Yoni Monat, who wrote various folk songs, among other things. And you know, this is the thing from which we get the English song Hanukkah, with somewhat different words. So I'll do this. Oy Chanukah, Adat, Hashem, Alastik, Freilich, Mishtim, Nasa, Allah not with the Shmir, Shehe Savatas, Estash, Schwinder, Kinder, Ehan, Kali, Lehan, so on these, Lord Hashem, from these,
Okay, thank you, Andy. Beautiful performance. So there are a few things that we mentioned. We talked about Ala Nisim, which is what talks about the war, thanking Hashem for the Nisim. What are all the Nisim? We discussed today a lot of what the different Nisim are, and also Minig Yisrael is to eat latkes and sufganiyot. So hope everyone enjoys Chanukah, Ruchnius and Gashmius. It should be an uplifting Chanukah. The first candle is Thursday night, and hopefully the candle should be a light for ourselves and all the Yidden around us in Sharon or wherever we are, and also it should be a shmirah and a guardian for all of the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael.